Hold on. That's better. Good afternoon, Democrats. It's Robbie White. I'm the chair of the Oklahoma County Democratic Party, and it is my pleasure to be here filling in for Alicia Andrews, our state party chair. I hope that you are experiencing some sunshine today. It has been a really cold week in Oklahoma. And I'm going to just pause because I'm experiencing a little bit of a delay. Yeah. Oh, I know it. Yeah. Okay, that's better. I think I'm synced up now. It's a beautiful Friday. We are. Everybody's sort of catching their breath, but I wanted to bring something to your attention that is starting on Monday, and that is our new legislative session. I know you've been paying attention, just like I have. That there have been bill filing deadlines, and there has been all kinds of hearings for the budget. We've all seen some of the drama around the education budget that has been presented and now it amended, and so we know it's happening, but I wanted to let everybody just sort of think about it for a while. So on Monday morning, the new legislative session begins, and the first thing that we need to pay attention to is the state of the state speech by our governor. Now, to be brutally honest, it's a little hard for me to watch that or listen. There are very few people with whom I disagree so fundamentally as our governor, but I do disagree with him on almost everything, from his sports teams to his policies. But I'm going to watch or listen whatever I have time to do on Monday, and it's going to help me to filter that experience through some really smart people on Twitter. And there are three groups of people I follow on Twitter to help me be smarter and frame up the news of the day. And one of those groups are our elected Democratic officials. So if you follow the Senate caucus, the Democratic caucus, or the House Democratic caucus, and their members, you're going to be on top of it. And I don't know if you guys have seen. I'm not going to start calling out individual representatives and senators because they're all so clever, but they get me through some really hard news days. They're in the room where it happens. They sometimes give us actual live tweeting of events, and then later they give us their thoughtful and very well informed responses to what are sometimes unreasonable actions and opinions that are represented by our Republican elected officials. So I follow that group of people. The other group I follow is our party leadership. So our Oklahoma Democrats have a Twitter feed. The Oklahoma County Democratic Party has a Twitter feed. And then the third group that I follow on Twitter to help me keep a little bit sane are local journalists. And we have, I'm going to be on my soapbox for a minute about this. But we have some really good local journalism. And we know that from reporting that's been done just recently by the Oklahoman, that a lack of local journalism has really affected our voting and the voter turnout and voter engagement. So I want to just encourage you to, at every opportunity as you're able, to support journalists. We need to pay for the media that we consume. And for me, I have been a longtime supporter of NonDoc, which is an Oklahoma-based web news service. They actually do real journalistic reporting, and there are so many other groups as well. The Frontier, the Free Press, and those are just like some of our web-based versions, but also the Enid News and Eagle. That's a really good paper to read. And if you go to and you like an article there and you want to share it with your friends, you can pay a really small fee just for that, just share that one article. The Tulsa World is something. Even though I live in Oklahoma City, I subscribe to the Tulsa World online. And then in Oklahoma City, the Oklahoman is a very decent paper, and they have surprised me a lot in local years. So I just want to encourage you to really not only read and consume that media, but also if you're able to support it financially, I think that's really important. So some of the people we're going to be following on Monday during the State of the State are Paul Money's. This is a group from Oklahoma Watch, which is kind of a public interest group of reporters. So Paul Money's, and he's, I don't know if we have that on a banner we can share, but there's some people we should follow. Keaton Ross, Jennifer Palmer, just a lot of good education reporting. Whitney Bryan, who's at Sooner Reporter, and then of course Trey Savage from NonDoc. Um, so those are just a few that I'm going to follow as I'm trying to get through the State of the State speech. And then once that speech is over, then the real work begins. And I want to encourage you to put on your advocacy hat and flex those muscles. We as Democrats, voters, residents of the state of Oklahoma have a responsibility to pay attention to what's happening at the legislature. And that's where following our Democratic caucus members comes in and is very, very important. So if you are attending Andy Fugate's Sunday night Facebook Live or any of the events that our legislators will provide. I know Rep. Turner has a weekly newsletter she sends out. So I want to encourage you to follow their lead. Because sometimes it can be overwhelming. There are, I think, thousands of bills that have been filed so far this year. So if you want to know where to point your efforts, that's a good place to start. Other groups that do a great job of pointing us in the right direction for advocacy are the ACLU of Oklahoma, and then also Moms Demand Action of Oklahoma is right on top of the legislative action that we should be taking regarding gun legislation. So how do we do it? How do we advocate? It sounds like such a simple word. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to hop over to the House and Senate websites and locate your representatives. And you're going to save their numbers in your phone. So for me, Senator George Young and Representative A.J. Pittman are my legislators who represent me in where I live. And so I'm going to program that into my phone. They're in there now. And when I'm ready to make a call, I don't have to think about it. I just go in there and I call their legislative office, and someone who works in that office is going to answer that phone. It might be an intern or a legislative assistant, but whoever it is going to be ready to take our calls. So when you call into a representative or a senator's office, be ready to talk to someone and know that that person is just there to help you. And so be really polite and be nice. And, you're a lot more likely to get that message across if you are using your best manners. So whether you're like me and you have Democratic representation or you're calling to a Republican's office, it's their job to listen to you as their constituent. So you're going to call up there and you're going to say, I oppose or I support a particular measure. And it's important to do this on a regular basis. There are other ways you can communicate as well. You can send emails, and that information is also on the Senate and House website. You can email in. Years ago, I started doing something that I don't know if it works anymore. So maybe you can comment on the video. I used to handwrite a note and fax it in to an office. So I don't know if offices have fax machines anymore, but I wanted to do something unusual and I wanted it to be timely. So I didn't want to have it sit in the snail mail and take 4 or 5 or 6 days to get there. So I would fax this in and I would get responses. And I think this was a federal, I think we were advocating for something in Washington, D.C. at the time, and I'd started handwriting a note and sending it in. So you could absolutely drop a snail mail, a piece of paper with your note in it in the mail and put a stamp on it and send it over there. You can email their office. You could email a copy of a handwritten note, and you can make that phone call. There's some people out there who say you should make 5 calls a day or 5 calls a week, but I would encourage you to just say, hey, I'm just going to spend this much time advocating in my life. Maybe that's 5 calls every week, and you set aside 20 minutes one morning a week where you're just going to make those calls. And maybe you're going to be accountability partners with somebody, and you're going to share that on your social media and say, hey, I made my 5 calls. Did you make your 5 calls? Or I sent my 5 emails. But I promise you, it makes a difference. Even though I know I'm going to agree with my representative and my senator 99% of the time, it's still important that I reach out and let them know what I'm thinking as a constituent. And so when you reach out and you call, they're going to ask you your name and probably where you live. Because we're not always calling our own legislature. Sometimes we call other legislators. Maybe an issue that you're advocating for is heading for a particular committee, and you want to support or oppose that bill being seen in committee. And that's a reason you would call someone who maybe chairs a committee, but they're not your representative or your senator. So I'm sorry I got a little bit in the weeds about it, but I wanted to for you to get your head back into the game. It is the season of advocacy, and so sometimes we fight battles at the ballot box, and sometimes we fight ballots at the Capitol. So one final way that I want to remind you can always do, one way you can interact with your legislators, you can go to the Capitol. I happen to live in Oklahoma City, and I drive by the Capitol every day. I can almost see it from my house. But if you happen to be in Oklahoma City and you have time, that is the people's house, 100%. You are always welcome there. You just go through security and find your way. It looks really good these days. They've redone it. There's a beautiful museum, a little gift shop, but there's a directory, and the people there are very helpful. You can go to your legislator's office and see if they're there. Leave a message. It is a very simple thing to do, but don't forget that's probably the most impactful way is for you to get up there as often as you can and meet your legislators. However you're going to do it, calls, emails, handwritten notes, visits, make time in your week starting now. When you're doing your calendar for next week, where's your 20 minutes you're going to advocate? Which 5 calls are you going to make? And then also update your Twitter account, go follow some of these reporters, follow our Senate and House caucuses. So I hope you get out and enjoy some sunny Friday afternoon before it's over, and have a great weekend. Thanks for letting me fill in, Alicia. Have a great one, everybody.